Hi everyone. Sorry I'm a bit late. Start in 2 minutes. Let's wait for some people to join. Where is everyone joining from? Feel free to put your location in the chat if you want to. Hi, Sanchita. Great. So we have someone from Michigan. Anyone else want to put their location in the comments, in the chat? All right, let's start with questions. So feel free to start asking questions about EB-1A profile building. Hi, Siddharth. Hi, Bashkar. Hi, Maha. Hi, Amit. Hi, Anand. Hi, Nusha. Hi, Vinod. All right, now first question. I am from industry. How do I build on authorship criteria? So authorship it's about, I think the easiest way to understand authorship is to first know what USCIS considers something that counts towards authorship. I think before you understand that, you shouldn't go about just writing. I mean, you can like publish in places like Medium. You can publish in like different blogs. Just know that those articles don't necessarily count towards authorship. You want to be focusing on scholarly articles. That's what USCIS tends to consider as pieces of evidence that count towards authorship. So that's why you want to be publishing in journals, in anything that has a peer review process. That's their general definition of scholarly articles. If you're in industry, you're not expected to have a lot of citations. I think from what I've heard, if you have less than 100 citations, it's still fine. You're not expected to have over 100. You're definitely not expected to have over 500 if you're building an industry case. And you're also probably not expected to be publishing tons of papers outside of work, but you are expected to have at least a few publications if you want to work towards authorship. And that's publication of scholarly articles, not just some Medium blog posts or even blog posts in top industry blogs. That's just based on what I've heard. And if you look at the policy manual, it does focus on scholarly articles. So yeah, if you want to be building towards authorship, you want to be focusing on scholarly articles. How do you do that? Well, one thing you can do is start talking to people who run industry conferences or research focused conferences. A lot of them have calls for papers right now. This is actually something that I just posted about in a post I did about robotics. I also post these opportunities in my profile building opportunities database. So I'll be going through those resources after I answer some of your questions. That's that's one place to start targeting some of these industry and research focused conferences and answering their calls for papers. Because if you get to present your paper at these conferences, it can also count towards final merits because you're getting acclaim and recognition from other top professionals in your field, assuming that the attendees to this conference that you are attending is attended by top professionals in your field. Another way to target authorship is to just start talking to people at member organizations like IEEE and ACM. And one I just recently came across was Computing Research Association. I think that's the correct name. This is just for tech outside, but then IEEE also covers other fields. So you might want to start talking to people who are members in these organizations to see if they're working on papers, and perhaps you could co-author something together. That's another way to get started with publications. And the third way is to peer review for publications and for people, offer to review their papers, and then that's how you can start meeting people who are writing papers. So that's what you want to do. But yeah, moving on to, I know that we spent quite a bit of time on that question, but yeah, that was the question. I'm from industry, how to build on authorship criteria. Great, Sanchita, great to see someone in healthcare. Question, is NIW a good first step to get EB-1A? Not necessarily, based on what I've heard. EB-2 NIW is far more discretionary than EB-1A in that EB-2 NIW is literally based on 3 prongs of a test that is highly subjective because the terms such as substantial merit, national importance, they're not really properly defined, so that an officer can have a lot of discretion in determining what those terms mean, and that could mean one thing to one officer and another thing to a different officer. That's why NIW is highly discretionary, whereas EB-1A is more focused on the 10 criteria, meet 3, and then pass final merits. So there's more of a structured process involved, and there's far less discretion. They also serve different, I think they have different purposes as well. Of course, everyone wants to go for EB-1A eventually because it's usually the fastest way to get a green card, but it's not necessarily an attainable standard, especially if you're more junior or mid-level in your career. So, but then this is just very generally speaking. NIW does help you secure a priority date. So in that sense, NIW can help with EB-1A and helping you secure a priority date. This is just based on what I've heard, but definitely speak to a lawyer to clarify this about your specific situation. Generally speaking, NIW can help you secure a priority date, which can then be used for EB-1 if you get EB-1. So, yeah. Maha asks, what's the best way to handle the EB-1 media presence criteria? Can you share some examples and insights? So I think you're referring to the media coverage criterion, Maha. Examples and insights. So insights first. Media coverage, it has to be media published by major media or trade publications in your field. That's the specific language that's used in the policy manual. Insights are the article should be about you and your work, generally speaking, and you don't need lots of media sources that talk about you and your work to meet this criterion. If you have a couple of major, I think even 1 or 2 major media sources covering you, that could help. But it's up to you then to define what major media means for your specific field and what major trade publications means for your specific field. So just make sure you add that context if you do decide to go for this criterion. Generally speaking, it is difficult to meet this criterion because it's difficult to get covered in major media. If you just go pay for media or go for not as well-known media, you may not necessarily meet this media coverage criterion. That being said, you can still target trade publications, and perhaps you have some of these publications in your field that are widely read. Again, you have to show that they are widely read by practitioners in your field. That could also be a way to meet the media coverage criterion. Examples, if you got covered by Business Insider and then, I don't know, Bloomberg or something like that, that could be major media. Outside of that, I've heard that there are major trade publications in a lot of these different fields. I know in the semiconductors field, there are a lot of major trade publications. I think there's some of these examples in my profile building opportunities database. but I can get back to you with more specific examples if you have a specific field in mind.
And if you want more profile building opportunities, you can look into my profile building opportunities database, which shows you over 150 profile building opportunities for those of you who are looking into EB-1A and O1. I currently cover fields like AI, software engineering, manufacturing, cybersecurity, data science, and a bunch of other fields that are listed in the database. And for $12 a month, you'll get access to my profile building opportunities database, my reviews of AAO decisions, which are EB-1A appeals, and go into USCIS's reasoning for initially denying EB-1A petition. So if you want to better understand how EB-1A petitions are adjudicated, you definitely want to look at AAO decisions. And outside of that, you will also get access to my guide to EB-1A profile building and also my private group for EB-1A and O1 profile builders. So that is what's included in the paid newsletter. But back to the video.
Siddharth asks, I am a senior IEEE member. How do I get involved for reviewing papers? Well, there are a couple of ways you can get involved in reviewing papers. One way is to just message or contact a lot of IEEE members. If you go on LinkedIn and search IEEE senior member, you'll find probably thousands of results of these people. So just try to message at least 50 to 100 of those people every single week to see if you can help with reviewing their papers. But definitely just start a conversation first. Try to understand if they're actually working on a paper. And if they're not, if they know anyone who's working on a paper, that is one way to get involved in reviewing papers. Another way is to join committees and societies within IEEE, attend their meetings, and then go meet people in person and then see if you can, through these in-person interactions, start meeting people who are working on papers or reviewing papers themselves and would be interested in having you as a reviewer. The third way to get involved, based on my understanding, is to go to local chapter meetings. You can actually contact the local chapter president for your local chapter to see if they know anyone. And then if you want to go even further, go contact other chapters of IEEE and see if their chapter presidents know anyone who is looking for people to review their papers or even looking for people to write their papers. To others here, is it worth keeping your IEEE membership? I've been pretty passive this last year. Well, I think it really depends on how you use the membership. It's important for any membership, unless you were invited to be like a fellow of a very prestigious society, I don't think the membership in itself does anything for you. It's how you use the membership. And how you want to be using the membership is you want to first use it as a way to establish common ground with people you have not met but want to talk to. So going back to what Siddharth's question was about, you want to be talking to other IEEE members who may also be reviewing papers, who may be working on papers, who may be attending conferences. You might also want to start getting involved in your local chapter and just start volunteering for events, helping organize them, or start volunteering at conferences, IEEE conferences. That's how you can use your membership. So whether it's worth keeping your membership or not, I think it depends on how much effort you're willing to put into getting involved. So that's a question only you can answer. Does conference paper count towards authorship? Yes, conference paper, but only if there is some sort of peer review process. Maybe they're accepted if there's no peer review process, but based on the policy manual, and I'm just operating based on the policy manual, and this is my understanding. Again, ask a lawyer if you want a specific conference paper included as part of authorship and you want their take on it. But generally speaking, if it's a conference paper that has been peer reviewed, it can potentially count towards the authorship criterion. Sanchita asks, publishing papers took a long time to process. Is there any other way to build profile in publishing papers? Yes. So there are 10 criteria. You don't have to target authorship. I have seen people target leading a critical role, high salary, membership, and judge role. And then they end up meeting 3. That is still enough for meeting the 3 of the 10 criteria. So authorship is not necessary, especially if you have an industry case. You don't really need to publish papers. It's not completely necessary. And especially if you're very established in your field and you have even gotten media coverage, you could potentially meet media coverage. Maybe membership because of the media coverage. You got into very prestigious member organizations in your field. So you could potentially meet leading a critical role, high salary, membership, and media coverage, and not even have to touch authorship. So yes. How to get media coverage for USPTO approved patents? Well, one way to get media coverage is to just contact the major trade publications in your field. So this is something I actually do as well. I just reach out to journalists and I talk to them, and then sometimes they're interested in talking further about some topic. So that's something you can do. You can just reach out to journalists regularly, especially, and also publishers of major trade publications in your field, and just get into a conversation with them and try to understand what their needs are, what their coverage needs are, and how you can help them. And if your patent is directly related to what they want to be covering right now, so for example, right now a really hot topic is, I don't know, like AI agents. That's a really hot topic. So maybe if your patents are related to AI agents, go talk to some journalists who are covering this actively, and then first learn about what they're covering and try to anticipate what their needs are, and then present your expertise and show how you can help them. So that's one way to get media coverage for your patents. Siddharth says, thank you, you're welcome. Siddharth asks, does a published book carry weight if it's based on technology in which you are not working right now and it's 10-year-old? Really depends on whether it's related to your field of expertise. Again, something that doesn't have to directly help your case, and it can still create ways to help your case. So if you published a book with a major member organization and then you establish contacts through that book, doesn't matter if that book was covering some sort of old technology, you still got those connections to some very top people within some top member organizations, and then you can use those connections that you have formed to go then speak at conferences, to go join other member organization events, to go serve on committees. So a book doesn't necessarily have to contribute to your case, but it can still create ways for you to generate a claim and recognition for your specific field and your work, so that you can then look into current ways to maybe talk about current technology that could help your profile. But it really depends on what the focus of your profile is on right now. Is it on like an old technology? Because if it is, then maybe then that book could work. And it also depends on where it was published too. From what I've heard, self-publishing, unless you've gone like some amazing metrics, may not necessarily help as much. But if you publish through like a notable member organization or a publishing house in your field, and the book was peer-reviewed, that could also add towards final merits because it's an example of claim and recognition in your field. Sanchina asks, how much salary year range is needed for a high grade? So from what I've heard, what matters is your base salary within your specific region, and then there's a specific percentile you have to look at for the Bureau, within the Bureau of Labor Statistics. If I'm not mistaken, it's the 90. It's definitely in the 90s. It's definitely higher than the 9th percentile, but I'm going to have to check on that. But definitely higher than the 90th percentile, and it's for base salary too. But definitely ask your lawyer if you want a more specific answer for your specific case. This is just the general answer. I asks, I'm in the field of IT, mainly concentrated on AI, cybersecurity, and cloud computing. I have policy papers presented in MIT and Harvard. Wondering what's my best criteria at EB-1. Will I be able to leverage media criterion also for high salary criteria with level 3 wages of, I guess, count? So having published policy papers in MIT and Harvard, that could potentially count towards the authorship criterion. It depends on what level of seniority you're at your company, whether you can show leading a critical role or even original contributions. But if you can, let's say, show one of these two anchor criteria and leading a critical role or original contributions, then you may have one criterion down already. And then if you can show that you've published these papers recently, then and you're still continuing to publish papers, then perhaps you could already meet authorship as well. Let's say you meet high salary as well. Usually, if you have a leading or critical role, you can generally meet the high salary criterion. It's not guaranteed, but it usually is the case. But let's say you meet these three, then the rest of the ones that you should be looking at are probably membership, not necessarily media. Maybe look at membership and judging. Judging is actually one of the more straightforward criteria because it's usually interpreted at a plain language level, meaning that there's no like final mini final merits analysis, as long as you can show like a record of judging other people's work, not within your company that is, but like within like say like peer reviewing papers, or maybe like judging hackathons or like competitions in your field, then that could also help you with judging. So it sounds like maybe you should work on judging and membership. Work towards membership. Membership is difficult to meet generally, but membership can help you with the other criteria. And then if you really want to, then work on media coverage, but it's not absolutely necessary. I would say work on judging and then work towards membership as well. And then maybe try to strengthen your authorship claim by maybe working on more papers, but just make sure those papers are somewhat related to your field. Jason, thank you for your detailed answers. What would be the first step towards building your EB-1A profile? I have about 8 years of experience, and my expertise is spread over a spectrum, so I'm not sure how to claim expertise in any one field. I'm currently unsure if I satisfy any of the 3 criteria needed. When should I be consulting a lawyer? Will they help evaluate my profile? Generally speaking, you want to at least have a first consultation with a lawyer to have them understand your specific circumstances and to determine if EB-1A is really the best option for you, because there are also other EB-1 options like EB-1B and EB-1C. EB-1C tends to be more straightforward than EB-1A. So maybe speak to a lawyer to explore all of your potential options first. But let's say you've already spoken to a lawyer, or you want to start profile building first because you know for sure that EB-1A is what you want to go for. Defining your field of expertise is something that you probably want to work with a lawyer on, because if they're going to be working on your case, ideally, you want them to understand what your field of expertise is, so they know how to present your field of expertise. That is something that you can work with your lawyer on. But generally speaking, you want to, this is how I've seen it done. One way is to identify a problem that you've helped solve at a very high level in your field, and then look at the occupations that help solve this problem, and then pick one occupation that's most related to yourself, and then look at how the top professionals within this occupation are operating, and then whether you are able to show that you are in the top few percent within the specific occupation that is solving this specific problem. That's one way to define a niche, anchoring it to a problem. And I did speak to someone who got their EB-1A approved. They solved a very specific problem where it had something to do with, I think, government funding. He was able to show that there was severe misallocation in government funds for specific projects, and then he built some sort of AI model that helped better allocate these funds. So he was solving a problem that no one else in the industry had really been able to solve. His work was able to directly contribute to solving that problem, and then his model was even adopted by other major companies in the field. So if you ask, like, what was his field of expertise there? Well, solving that specific problem. And that problem had tremendous positive consequences for the field. So that was how he defined his field of expertise. And that is one specific way to define your field of expertise. Show how you solved a major problem in your field, show the occupation related to solving that problem, and then how you have risen to the top of that occupation. And then that could be your field of expertise, solving that problem by doing a specific occupation. Akalesh asks, can you talk a bit about how a product manager can build EB-1 profile apart from the impact of work and salary? What are some opportunities that we can take up? So this is something that I actually cover in my profile building opportunities database. I can just briefly share what those look like. So these resources are part of my paid newsletter, which is $12 a month. As a member of this paid newsletter, you will get access to a lot of profile building opportunities. So I update this database every few days. There are right now, I think, over 160, 70 opportunities. So these are some opportunities for PMs, for example. So don't forget that EB-1A profile building is about final merits as well. You want to be generating acclaim and recognition for your work, and one way is to speak at top conferences. So these are some of the top conferences that I have been listing for PM. Then you can also publish in journals like the Journal of Product Innovation Management, that's Authorship. But I'm just going to speed through this demo. But these are just some of the opportunities. Here's data science stuff to fill some of this out. But I'm rapidly adding opportunities all the time. This is AI, and then there are a bunch of other fields as well. As part of my paid resources, you also get access to my 8 decisions reviews. These are EB-1A appeals. These go into USCIS's reasoning for initially denying an EB-1A petition, so they can be insightful in understanding what didn't work or what USCIS questioned, and I add comments for these AAO decisions to give you an understanding of how USCIS seems to think about EB-1A profiles, and I make sure these comments are related to profile building for EB-1A, and I review a couple of these decisions every week. I think I reviewed like 7 or 8 at this point. And that's something I'm trying to build out right now is some collaboration requests as part of the paid newsletter, so you can list out collaboration opportunities. And outside of that, I'm also actively talking to hackathon organizers and conference organizers. I actually just posted the contact information for one hackathon organizer who's interested in speaking to a lot of you about judging their hackathon. It's for a well-known university. So I'm directly talking to these hackathon and conference organizers to make sure that there are ways for a lot of you to reach out to these people and have a smooth conversation. But going back to your question, Akhilesh, how can a product manager build an EB1 profile, EB1A, I'm assuming, because there's also EB1C for product managers. Apart from leading a critical role in high salary, you can look into judging. So you can look into judging competitions. You can also look into peer reviewing articles that are in the product management field. So that would count towards the judging criterion. You can also look at authorship as well, writing articles and peer-reviewed articles, so scholarly articles in the field of product management. You can also look at membership, but you would have to show that tier of membership that you have attained is one of the core requirements of that membership has to be that members have to have outstanding achievements. So that's why membership is more difficult to meet. But for now, maybe focus on authorship and judging. And if you really want to push it, focus on membership. And if you're working on some very high profile products, perhaps media coverage. But judging, authorship, and membership should be a good combination, assuming you already meet leading a critical role and the high salary criterion. Any other questions? Feel free to ask any other questions you have. All right, so I see a question from Anusha. EB1 processing times for India is about 3 to 4 years now, I think. Is the decision on EB-1A made immediately, or does it follow the above timeline? Same question for EAD. Do we receive the EAD soon after approval, or does it take 3 to 4 years to get EAD? Not sure about the EAD question. You may want to ask a lawyer. 3 to 4 years, I believe, is you're referring to the EB1 backlog. Yeah, I think that's what it is right now, but my understanding is that it's much longer for EB-2, which is where most people end up, or at least initially. The decision for EB-1 is not made in 3 to 4 years. That's the processing time for getting the that's the backlog. Whereas I think what you're referring to is the processing times and how long it takes to get a decision. That depends on whether you premium process or not, based on my understanding. But you may want to speak to your lawyer about potential processing times, especially based on your specific situation. And then Akilesh asks, maybe furthers my question, can we work with the university we graduated for and build profiles such as guest lecturer, working with professors? Yes, absolutely. So you want to talk to people you have something in common pretty much all the time. That's probably one of the fastest ways to get profile building opportunities, especially for authorship. Talk to some professors that you worked with or you attend or you, who taught you when you were going to your university and see if they're working on any research projects that might need peer reviewers or maybe they're interested in co-authoring a paper with you. You can always just ask as many of these professors as possible. You can also ask if they know any undergraduate or graduate research assistants who might be interested in working with you on a paper or may need peer reviewing. That's one way to work on authorship. Outside of that, you can also ask professors for industry connections to see if they know anyone at top conferences who may be looking for people like you to speak. That's just several of the few ways you can get involved with the university that you graduated from, or even just your local university. Katie Yode asks, what is the right approach for a first-year PhD in bioinformatics to fulfill a critical role or leading role? Yeah, I've never really come across this situation before. But if you're in your first year PhD program, I think the question you have to ask yourself is, are you trying to go for an academia-focused profile or an industry-focused profile? Based on my understanding and based on what I've heard, most academics seem to go for original contributions because I think if research is the basis of your case, then you want to show lengthy authorship. You want to show a body of work and then how that has actually helped you shape the field through the research you did. That is what you want to be showing. So usually it's not leading a critical role. But if you take on an industry role after you graduate from your PhD and you work on some significant project that drives a lot of revenue for your company, maybe like millions in revenue, or saves significant costs, or leads to some transformative outcome, then that could be a way to show leading a critical role. That just depends on what kind of case you're going for. Vinod asks, cute, will an IEEE senior member meet the qualifications for the EB-1 criteria? Second question, will an IEEE conference paper reviewer meet the EB-1? First one, senior member, I don't think meets membership. That's based on what I've heard. I don't think it meets any of the other EB-1A criteria, but senior membership can unlock many opportunities for you to work towards the EB-1A criteria. So I don't think senior membership is not useful. I think senior membership can help you with finding a lot of opportunities. You just have to use the senior membership in the ways that I described just now, which is reaching out to other senior members to work with papers on, to reach out to societies to see if you can help with their conferences, reach out to people within IEEE in general to see if you can peer review for them. Excuse me. Reach out to see if you can peer review for them. Second question, will an IEEE conference paper reviewer meet the EB-1? It does help with the judge role criterion. And when you peer review, you can also meet people who are writing papers. So that could be a way to find opportunities to meet authorship. It's all about combining the different profile building opportunities you have into one single way of getting these opportunities. So one could be attending a lot of IEEE conferences because that's how you get peer reviewing opportunities. Which helps with judging. That's how you get lots of that's how you meet people who are writing papers for the conferences. That could be potentially how you meet co-authors for authorship. Maybe you meet some press in the conference itself. That could be a way to get media coverage. Don't underestimate the importance of in-person meetings as well. I know a lot of you want to do like virtual conferences and all, but I think it's still better to go in person to a lot of these events, even if it's just a meetup or like volunteering. Maya asks, I understand that the best way is through a profile evaluation, but 15 years experience, 2 judging competitions, 2 papers presented, and 1 award-winning paper with volunteering and global NGO salary at level 3 wages from Department of Labor stats will look promising for EB-1 or still need some improvement. 2 judging competitions, 2 papers. You can go for like a free evaluation to see if you're ready. Some law firms offer that. But outside of that, maybe try to you never want to think if I guess this depends on your take on EB-1A. Some people would never want to think that they're completely ready. So they keep building, they keep finding ways to generate a claim and recognition, and they just forget about whether there's some sort of minimum threshold they have to meet. Because generally speaking, unless you are really highly qualified right now, which is not common at all, then you don't really want to have this minimum threshold mentality. You probably just want to try to find as many ways to keep generating claim and recognition for your work. It doesn't matter if you just meet 3 criteria, you still need to show that you can pass final merits, which is showing that you've generated a claim and recognition for your work, indicating that you have risen to the top of your field, essentially. So that piece, there is no defined threshold, so you want to keep finding ways to generate a claim and recognition for your work. That being said, there is a point where the more you do, the much smaller the benefit you get. For what I'm seeing here, you want to speak to a lawyer, Mahat, just to see if you are where you're at and get their suggestions on how you want to improve your profile. Based on my understanding, it seems like maybe doing a bit more judging and do peer reviewing. And then if you have an award-winning paper, that in itself could help with authorship as long as it's related to your field. But then you're relying on just one paper, so maybe write a few more papers. That is, you probably may be getting requests to write papers already because you have an award-winning paper, but then it also depends on what kind of award you won. So I can't really say based on your question right now what award you won. But if it's a highly recognized award in your field, maybe you're already getting opportunities to peer review, opportunities to write papers. So yeah, maybe work on more papers, work on more judging, but outside of that, speak to a lawyer to get a more contextual understanding of your case. Perhaps you do have leading or critical role and high salary, and you have somewhat of a strong judge role, and that could be 3. Some lawyers maybe are comfortable with having you just meet 3 potential criteria already, but some lawyers are maybe more comfortable with you meeting 4 to 5 criteria, and then even if 1 or 2 are struck down, you still have 3. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. All right, I'm going to take one last question. Binod asks, papers and white papers published by the organization will count towards the EB-1A visa application. EB-1 is the category. There's EB-1A, EB-1B, EB-1C. I assume you're asking about EB-1A. Papers and white papers published by the organization. So if you're talking about your company, probably not, unless your company is some sort of university or like research institute and can show they're a peer review. It's a peer review process, but even then, you might want to ask a lawyer if that's actually something that is the case because you work for that company. But papers and white papers in general published by organizations that have some sort of peer review process, that you can use as the basis for an argument that you have published scholarly articles and therefore have worked towards authorship. Could just take a couple more questions, if there are any. I think this was asked already, but EB-1 processing times, EB-1, that's the backlog. That's the 3 to 4 year backlog. So that's not the amount of time it takes. Maybe this just came up late. But yeah, I guess I'm just going to answer this again. 3 to 4 years is the backlog. It's not the amount of time it takes to process an EB-1A. That will depend on your case itself and whether you're premium process or not. You want to speak to a lawyer. The EAD question, you will definitely want to speak to a lawyer. All right, one last question. All right. If there are no other questions, thanks everyone for attending. Send it there. Thanks everyone. Oh wait, there is one. Or last question. Any suggestions on what papers could one write if they're a software engineer? I think I posted like quite a few of these opportunities in my profile building opportunities database. Take a quick look right now. So I found one called computing. Well, this is more for cloud computing, but computing frontiers. So that's a journal, but more for cloud computing. For software engineers, there's the International Journal of Software Engineering. A lot of these, I would say for software engineering, maybe focus on ACM publications. So I know ACM has a bunch of publications. So I just came across one, ACM Transactions on Software Engineering and Methodology. But instead of just targeting journals out of the blue, you probably want to target conferences first so that you can then publish if you get accepted. That is, if your paper gets accepted, it then gets published in the journal linked to the conference. So that's probably the approach you want to take. You want to publish in a conference, present at a conference, and then publish to their journal. Yeah. But if you want to just publish directly to a journal, probably look at a lot of the ACM publications. I can link that here. And one way to get involved in these journals is to start talking to the people who have already published in these journals. Yeah, just sent you the link. Those are just the ACM journals, but I'll add more journals in my profile building opportunities database. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Anusha. All right, I think that's it for today. Thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for joining.